Alright folks, let's get this show on the road. We are looking at the reticle of a Schmidt-Bender PM2 dual CC 1 to 8 by 24. The reticle is called MDR-T6. It's not a terribly clear day, so I'm gonna briefly show you my favorite mountain, and then we'll look at something a little closer. It's not a high max scope anyway. Here's NDA mountain. The scope does not have adjustable parallax. We are on 8 power right now. Moving right along. Let's look at the roof of a house. It's not too far from me. That is about 100 yards or so away. And that is where the parallax of this scope is set when we are on 8 power. You can see the image quality is quite good, and I've spent a lot of time shooting this scope at considerable distances with no issues whatsoever. The reticle, in terms of how the tree is done, is one of my favorites that I've seen to date. I like abbreviated tree reticles. It's basically a 6 milliradian tree with a little bit more granularity for holdovers within the first 2 milliradian down, so there are a couple of half milliradian dots, which is where you'll do really the bulk of your shooting with a scope like this. And 6 milliradian on most good platforms will get me out to, I don't know, 600 yards, 600 meters or so, depending on the caliber. And I spent most of my time shooting with this thing. I also had a Tarac device on, which when up would allow me to use that same tree out to about 1,000 yards, which is beyond the range of a normal 223, but perfectly reasonable for 6.5 Grendel, and similar 6mm RC will get you even further. The reticle was designed for the military, so there are those quick human-sized figure rangefinders in the bottom that I don't really use. The rest of it I like. Notice the reticle is skeletonized so that when you go on low power, you do not really see it. So I'm gonna start going down into 6, 4, 3, 2. Now you see it's kind of barely visible. 1.1, and beyond 1.1 you see this little thing happening. I don't know if you heard the click. You don't really see much of the reticle. It is and the parallax switches to 7 meters around there, right around 8 yards, a little bit less, just over 7 yards. Okay, so I'm gonna go back up, and I'll point at something else. The optical quality of this scope is just spectacular. This is easily the best low power variable scope overall for tactical purposes that I've seen once you account for optical mechanical quality and for the reticle. I will, let's find something closer just for the record in case anybody's paying attention. There are no rifles pointed at anyone. The scope is sitting on a tripod with a camera behind it, and I don't point guns at my neighbors. That would be very rude and very unsafe. Alright, I'm going back down on magnification again. So this time what I'm going to do, there are 2 different illumination modes in this scope. A center dot, which is in the second focal plane, or the tree reticle, which is in the front focal plane. And for both of them there are night settings and there are day settings. It's kind of a bright day, so I'm gonna go on the brightest. I'll close the objective for a little bit. So this is the portion of the reticle that is illuminated, which I like. I don't need the whole tree illuminated, but what they did very nicely is that they gave you kind of an illuminated cross that you can see, and even during the day, if you have a dark background, you can see the illumination, and they gave you hold marks for movers. in case you need to shoot something that is moving when the light conditions are not ideal. It is very nicely done, and on top of it also you can still dial and compensate for wind. Okay. If you go in the other direction, you can illuminate the second focal plane dot that's just in the center, and that thing is really bright. And that also has night settings, so I'm gonna close this for a moment and just show you. So look at the dot in the center as it starts getting bright. The first 3 dot settings are, I think, night vision compatible. They're very dim, and then there are 3 daylight settings. This is the brightest that gets quite bright. Alright, I could quite easily see it, and because this one is in a second focal plane, the dot remains an illuminated dot, even when the front focal plane reticle is not there. Here I'm on 1.1, I want to stay at 100-yard parallax, and now as I move it, you see the bright dot. I don't know if you see the slight blinking, that's a effect of the camera combined with this style of illuminated dot. When you do a video, there is a little bit of a beating frequency. With a naked eye, it's just a solid dot. When you do it with the camera, depending on the settings and the frame rate, you can get it to start blinking. Okay. Very nice, very fast. This is the closest to an aim point that I think I've seen overall. Let's point something else. Right, so if I had to take a quick shot, this house we're looking at is about, I think, 50-60 yards away. This is very, very nice. The downside, of course, is that if you run out of battery on one power, you basically just have to center the object in the field of view of the scope and go. And it works for me well enough after about 20-25 yards. But beyond that, one power with the dead battery with this scope gets a little tricky. That is really the only downside I can come up with for this scope. All right, moving right along.